Welcome to Government 101, Understanding Roles, Jurisdictions, and Civic Participation. This webinar is meant to explore the different levels of government, how jurisdictions overlap, and ways to make an impact in your community. There is a municipal election this year. This session can help support potential candidates who are looking to run or help others be more informed or engaged as an active citizen. My name is Diana Hewson. I'm the founder and co-chair of Equal Voice Niagara, a chapter of Equal Voice Canada, which is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to increasing the representation of women in all levels of government across Canada. Through advocacy, education, and mentorship, we work to inspire and empower women to run for office, break down barriers to political participation, and build a more inclusive, diverse political landscape. We're thrilled to offer this session in collaboration with the Wind Council at the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce. We certainly appreciate the support of the GNCC in presenting this webinar today. A few housekeeping items. If you have a question for one of our panelists, please add it to the chat. We'll be reviewing them at the end of our conversation, and time permitting, we will pose them to our panelists. Live transcription has been enabled, so you can activate the closed captioning if desired. It should be in the settings of your Zoom at the bottom of your screen. This webinar is also being recorded and will be available on the GNCC and Wind Council website. Equal Voice Niagara will also share the link to the video, so please follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn if you're looking for more information. Prior to introducing this powerhouse panel we have for you, we'll be conducting a few short polls to get to know our audience today. We have 3 quick questions for you, so please answer the polls as they pop up on your screen, and we'll be revisiting the results of the polls a bit later in the session. So our first poll is, what inspired you today? Our second question is, do you plan to run for municipal office in the next election? Just give you a moment to fill out the results. And our third question was, what aspect of municipal government do you feel least confident about? So thank you for sharing your information with us. Our polls have closed. We'll quickly review those responses after an introduction of our esteemed panel. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Mayor Sandra Easton. Mayor Easton is currently serving her 3rd term as mayor for the town of Lincoln, bringing a distinguished background in healthcare, governance, and community leadership. She's recognized for her dedication to building a strong, sustainable, and inclusive municipality. During her tenure, she has advanced major priorities such as infrastructure investment, environmental sustainability, economic development, and community well-being. Her leadership has earned Lincoln national recognition, including awards from the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators and the Government Finance Officers Association. A strong proponent of intermunicipal collaboration, Mayor Easton is an influential voice in Niagara's regional reform discussions, focusing on eliminating duplication, improving efficiency, and strengthening government partnerships to deliver long-term value and accountability for residents. She's especially proud of Lincoln's thriving and diverse agricultural sector, from award-winning vineyards and craft breweries to greenhouses and farm-to-table ventures. These showcase the sector's innovation, resilience, and sustainability. Her leadership has helped support this industry through strategic infrastructure and partnerships to drive economic growth. Mayor Easton's vision centers on balanced growth to protect Lincoln's unique charm while creating opportunities for young people to live and work locally. As the town continues to evolve, she remains committed to building a vibrant, prosperous, and connected community rooted in agricultural heritage and innovation. We're so happy to have you with us today, Mayor Easton. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Diana. And I'm very happy to have been included with Mayor Joanne. All of you who have joined us today, thank you so much. Thank you for your interest, even if your interest just is piqued by today and you can't go any further. We understand, but to have you with us is so important. It is a beginning and an important.
Thank you. So, without further ado, our second panelist, Joanne Vanderheyden, is also an accomplished municipal leader. Joanne has dedicated more than 30 years to community service, earning a reputation as a trailblazer in municipal leadership. She's made history as the first woman to serve as warden of Middlesex County and remains the only person ever elected by her colleagues to hold the position 4 times. She also broke new ground as the first woman mayor of Strathroy-Caradoc, paving the way for greater representation in local government. Throughout her career, Joanne has contributed to countless committees and boards, bringing her passion for good governance, collaboration, and community well-being to every role she undertakes. She has served as past president of the Ontario Good Roads Association, or OGRA, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, also known as FCM, and the Middlesex London Health Unit, reflecting her broad leadership across municipal, provincial, and national arenas. Her contributions have been recognized through numerous honors, including an honorary life membership with OGRA, FCM's Roll of Honor, and being named one of Municipal World's Women of Influence in Local Government in 2022. Amongst her proudest achievement is the opportunity to mentor young women at Western University, inspiring future leaders and championing the importance of women's voices in civic life. Welcome, Joanne, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and I look forward to the conversation. And Mayor Sandra Easton, we've met before, and it's really good to see you too. I hope that some of the nuggets that we try to share with you will resonate with the audience, and I hope that you feel free to reach out to us if you have any other questions.
So before we dive into our conversation, I'm just going to take a few minutes to review the results of those polls. This gives our panelists an opportunity to potentially build this feedback into the conversation. So most of our attendees are looking to be more engaged in the community. A few of them are interested in running for mayor, but mostly councillor. And a chunk of them are here just to learn, which is also great. In terms of what aspect they're looking for to feel more confidence about, it's the roles and responsibilities of elected council members, how different levels of provincial and federal governments interact, and just getting involved without being elected. So we do have some audience members who are interested in running, but some who are here just to be more involved in their community and potentially get involved without running. So thank you for sharing that feedback. And without further delay, let's jump into our panel conversation. So the first topic we were going to undertake is understanding municipal government. And my first question is for Mayor Easton. Can you please tell us what are the key responsibilities of municipal council compared to their provincial or federal governments, and where do these roles intersect?
This is a lengthy answer because it includes a lot of very interesting elements. Municipalities are unique forms of a legal entity that is not a business. We may operate by business like a business, but we are not a business. It's created through the Municipal Act. Or in the case of regional government, where I live in Niagara, it would be directed through the Niagara Act of 1970, where we have 2 tiers of municipal corporations. The powers that are exercised by council come through bylaw, and they are considered a legislative act. The powers are initiated through common law, and we have the capacity, the rights, the powers, and the privileges of a natural person for the purpose of exercising our authority under the 2001 Municipal Act. There are a number of committees that council sit on, but there are also many community committees, agencies, boards, and commissions, some that are capable of suing and some that are capable of being sued. This is not to scare you away, it's just to set the context. This is a very formal entity that you are either considering to be engaged in as a committee member or more formally as a councillor or a mayor. The municipalities have the right to provide any service or thing that they consider to be necessary or desirable for the public in their community, and they may pass bylaws accordingly. and those powers are exercised by municipal council. There's also a sphere of powers. In multi-tier municipalities, you may have one municipality that's exclusively responsible for sewers and water. In others, it's a shared responsibility. So it's important to be able to separate those out. Now, more specifically, what does council do? Well, we have a lot of meetings. We have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to consider. But what do we talk about? We talk about safety and security. In some cases, provision of police services, enforcement of bylaws, provision of fire protection. We may deliver utility services, water treatment and distribution. And all across this province, this profile changes. Power may be provided by our communities. We are also involved in the preservation of public assets, like the maintenance of roadways, the maintenance of park spaces, and public facilities. We provide leisure services, delivery of recreation programs, and the delivery of cultural programs. We provide municipal planning and building services. We provide social services, and we promote our communities locally as well as far afield. Now, these are all classified as service envelopes. They were changed from one community to another, but they are critical to sustainable continuance of civic functions.
Yeah, and just highlighting some of the things you talked about, I think that's why it said that municipal government is actually closest to the people in terms of as soon as you get up in the morning to turning your tap on, to flushing your toilet, to putting your garbage out, to driving to work. All of those are services that municipal government undertake. Joanne, I'm wondering if you could explain to us, how does the municipal decision making influence federal or provincial priorities or vice versa?
Thank you for that question. I don't know what people know and what they don't know, so I'm just going to read some notes that I made and put forward. And there are like 444 municipalities in Ontario. And out of the three orders of government, municipalities are truly, as Diana just mentioned, the closest to the people and provide the services that are most likely to impact your daily lives. Most people don't know which level does what. Frankly, most people really do not know that, but all are important. So collaboration is really necessary to ensure that we have funding, laws, policies that address the local needs. We also need to remember that municipalities are very different from each other. Ontario consists of various types of municipalities. We have cities, we have rural, small urban areas, regions, counties, and northern municipalities. We all deal with mostly the same things, but in different scales. So, rules and regulations that come down the chute are really important for us to try to have some kind of consultation in. It's really incumbent on anyone running for office to learn about the government structure, the priorities, policies, the relations at each level. Local services, as Mayor Easton mentioned, cover many things: roads, water, waste management, fire, policing, planning, bylaws, development charges, housing, just to name a few. And housing is to a degree. Some of these social services arguably fall outside of our scope because they're in our neighborhoods. We have to play a part. A case to illustrate how provincial decision-making can impact municipalities. I'm going to go back a little ways. I'm going back to the Harris government's common sense revolution. I've been in politics for 30 years, so this happened when I was in politics. A large portion of its highway network was transferred to municipalities. So imagine on April 1st, 1997, total of 1,767 kilometers, and January 1st of 1998, shortly thereafter, 3,210 kilometers were downloaded. Those used to be called the old King's Highways. They were all converted into county, regional, or municipal roads. Along with these roads came multiple bridges. As you can imagine, the cost to municipalities was tremendous. There was funding provided from levels of government, specifically the Connecting Link program for key connecting roads, top up to the Ontario Community Building Fund, which most of us know as OMPF, as well as Connect Canada Community Building Funds. These are all grants and federal funds dedicated to funding for roads, bridges, and broader infrastructure. I was in government long enough to see that the OMPF was pulled back bit by bit by bit. So you can see it's not surprising that historically municipalities have advocated for more predictable funding because there's a significant gap between our assets, our responsibilities, and our revenues. We can't run deficits. There is only one taxpayer. But the province gave us that responsibility. That was theirs. There was not a ton of communication happening before it all came down the chute. So working with organizations like FCM, AMO, Good Roads, Roma, they strengthen our opportunity for advocacy at other levels of government that we may not be able to do as small municipalities or even as large municipalities. If we all work together, we're a lot stronger.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And they also have different revenue generating tools. So the provincial government, of course, could collect revenues via sales tax or other means. The municipalities have to stick with the property tax. So certainly more susceptible to the pressures of changes that come down on municipalities. The second item we're going to dive into is intergovernment relations. And you did highlight this a little bit, Joanne. So I'm going to ask this of Sandra, or sorry, Mayor Easton, my apologies. Can you please explain to us the roles that organizations like AMO and FCM play in advocating for municipalities, how local leaders can leverage these associations effectively, and perhaps we can start with who these associations are, because a lot of people might not be familiar with what AMO or FCM does as an organization.
I think that's a very good statement that you made. Sometimes they're not well known even within the municipalities. But we've been very fortunate, as you know, Diana, you were our representative of FCM, and Rob Foster was our AMO representative. Both of you had a significant tenure. So you were close to us. And if we had questions, we knew exactly where to go. However, it's good, you have to understand the roles. The provincial government, we exist because the provincial government delegated all this work to us and continued to delegate. And they, as Joanne said, Mayor Joanne said, they're not sending the check with us, down the road with the project. So provincial government, people say that we are the child of the province. I have a lot of trouble with that because the work that we do is so serious and we are so effective at dealing with it that I really don't appreciate that definition. But they recognize that we are responsible and that we have the ability to be accountable with respect to matters that are within our jurisdiction. We are closest to the people. We can easily find out what's going on and what people think about it. However, recently, when I first became mayor, you were lucky to hear from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing twice a year. But I can tell you that we hear from them sometimes twice a week. And they have a lot of information to give us because there's tremendous pressures coming to the province to change the way things are done at the municipal level. And these pressures are coming in large part from developers. So how do you get information when new legislation comes your way? How do you get that information on how your community is responding through to AMO in particular? And it happens because AMO forms committees. I happen to sit on a committee that deals with energy and also planning matters. So whenever they have these meetings on a regular basis and we have a forum just like we're having today, it's very well organized and structured so that we can maximize our time. But it gives us an opportunity to firsthand give the impressions that our public have on these changes in legislation. Bill 60 is a big deal. Bill 5 is a big deal. These pieces of legislation appear on the surface to be taking significant powers away from the people. That's a subject for another day. There's a lot of reasons why these things are happening. My point is that AMO is the mechanism that we use to get information to the government. Now, FCM is a little bit different. I knew what was going on because I could go to Councillor Hewson at the time. But the that mechanism was handy to us because if there was a major issue, for example, the whole issue around declaring an emergency around mental health or homelessness or anything else that is happening in our communities, but those two are very important. Eventually, you really want to be able to see legislation on a bigger scale. You want to see that legislation develop across the country. AMO can help do that from the provincial perspective, but FCM moves it up higher. And it allows us to be able to deal with both the provincial and the federal government when we utilize our representatives to get that information across. It's not, I don't expect that. What I want to leave you with is that there are mechanisms that allow us to go way beyond our scope in order to have problems solved, to have problems heard, and to find information, to get access to information, reliable, up-to-date information. Resilience is one of the biggest qualities that you can develop as a municipality. You have to be able to roll with the punches, and you've got to be positive. You have to remain positive on behalf of your community. You can do that by staying close to other people that are like-minded and that will help you problem solve. I hope that comes somewhere close, Diana, to what you're looking for.
Thank you. There was a question in the chat just to specify, AMO is the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. As Joanne mentioned earlier, there's 444 municipalities across Ontario. They bring all those municipalities together and provide advocacy for the provincial government. FCM is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. They bring municipalities from across Canada together and provide advocacy with the federal government on legislation and policy issues that affect municipalities that are drafted and created by the federal government. So, Joanne, could you perhaps speak to how these organizations have been successful in terms of influencing policy at the provincial or federal level? Are there any examples you can point to where these organizations have really made a difference in terms of impact for municipalities?
Absolutely. And thank you, Mayor Easton, for that explanation. When we go to these organizations, whether it's Association of Municipalities of Ontario, whether it's Federation of Canadian Municipalities, whether it's Rural Ontario Municipalities or Good Roads, all of them work together and they don't have political affiliations. We go there to talk to each side of the chamber. So we talk to every minister we can, we talk to every member of parliament with our issues. So because we all know governments change and we don't always have the same people around the table. So the more people that we can reach with our conversations, and that's why these organizations are so important to us, that the more work we can get done and the more in tune they are to what our needs are. So you asked me about an actual thing that we did change. I want to go back to climate change, which is on everybody's mind, and it's around us. I mean, it's happening everywhere, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. It's there. It has an effect on each of us. So FCM worked with the federal government to find some solutions, and this was amazing. The result was that in the year 2000, the government of Canada invested $550 million to establish the Green Municipal Fund. The fund supports partnerships and leveraging of both public and private sector funding to reach higher standards of air, water, soil quality, and climate protection. This program has advanced stability, sustainability, innovation, and economic growth in many, many municipalities across the country. Every municipality can apply for these different things, different parts of that fund, and the money slides right through FCM and goes right to the municipalities, which is amazing. Rebecca Bly, who is the former Federation of Canadian Municipalities president, says, every investment strengthens local governments, the front lines of climate action, and the foundation of our country. These projects are more than infrastructure investments. These investments are in people, prosperity, and our shared future. So when municipalities can access funds like this through organizations like FCM or AMO, it really benefits all of us. So that's a real solid example of one of the many things that these organizations have done across the country.
That's great. Thank you, Joanne. So I'm going to pivot to, I think, a question that's, or a topic that some of our audience is interested in. That's the topic of running for office. We know there's a municipal election this year. Um, there's some, there's a lot of attention, I think, brought around some of the negative aspects of politics. But these are pretty fantastic jobs, and I think that there's a lot of benefit in terms of taking on these positions. Joanne, I'm looking for your advice. Why should somebody be interested in running, and what is particularly rewarding about the role?
I don't have a halo. I have really tall windows. I'm sorry. I'm really shiny at the top right now. Lucky thing I have hair. Um, just a little joke there. Why would someone be interested in running? This is a great question. There are a number of reasons why someone would want to run. One, they have a particular issue in their community that they want to take care of and they don't think is being taken care of. They want to give back, help others, make a difference in their community. Valid. My dad always said, give back to the community that gave us opportunity. Now we're immigrants to this country. I was born here, but my parents are immigrants. So that was very valid for me as a youngster to listen to say, yes, our community has given this family opportunity. My dad and my grandpa started a bakery. It's still running 75 years later. It's a factory. So, it's incredible. You may have expertise you want to share. For example, in leadership or financial skills, recreation, infrastructure, expertise. Those are all things that would be really good to have as you enter politics. Probably the worst reason is if you have animosity to some of the incumbents, but that happens many, many times. What I would recommend is outlining the reasons that make you feel you are capable of making a difference, as well as detailing how you intend to achieve meaningful impact, who you are, what ties do you have to the community, also why a voter would want to vote for you, and put that mark down on a paper because that's an important mark. During my first campaign, I shared, this is just an example, I shared that I have lived here all my life. As a homeowner and parent, my goal was always to help the community be an excellent place to live and raise my family. My university degree was in physical education. I had at that point served 2 terms on the local recreation board, accompanied that with experience in finance. I believed that I was well prepared to serve as an elected official. I had demonstrated a history of dedicated community work and was committed to ensuring that my voice and your voice could be represented through me. So that was kind of the little tidbit that I offered in my campaign. But you have to figure out what it is that you want. But those are some of the reasons. I just want to quote Elise. There's a woman that I met at a conference, a leadership conference. Her name is Elise Rose, and she said we should all strive for, and I think we do strive for. She spoke about hope, belonging, meaning, purpose, standing with humility, and leading with courage and using your voice. I know those are all social terms, but that has to be internal to you and make you the person that you are in order to come forward to say, yes, I will stand strong and use all the talents that I have. And I have many, and these are the ones that I have that I think can help. Because if you can articulate that, then you're a long ways along, even in a campaign or in anything else you want to do. So that seems to be something that I really wanted to share with everyone.
Great. Thank you, Joanne. Mayor Easton, what advice do you have for first-time candidates, and what should they know about the realities of municipal government before they decide to run as for a mayor or a councillor?
I was sharing earlier in the last election, I was acclaimed, but I was talking to some new councillors a few weeks after, and I discovered that they really didn't know the capacity of the role in terms of the number of hours a week that it takes to prepare and the number of meetings that you may be confronted with. So I think some of the bones of it, that framework of what the expectations are in your community, it's very, very important. I remember those days of thinking that I was going to run for mayor. Why was I going to run for mayor? I thought that there were some things that I could do better. Because of my nursing background, I had a good understanding of public health, and I felt that I could influence that. So I would recommend, the first thing I would do is, before the stars become too entrenched behind in your eyes, find out what the job is all about. Go and talk with one of the counselors, particularly a woman counselor, because sometimes they have less flexibility than our male colleagues. Find out what it really means. I have to tell you, I worked 42 years as a nurse, and I had many responsibilities. I worked as a nurse practitioner, and I was in charge of emergency departments and outpatient clinics. I had a really wonderful portfolio as it all came together. You need to look at the things that you've done and what you can contribute. And I want to speak now to the people that aren't really looking to get elected. You have no idea how valuable you could be in your community if you just go out and choose a couple of things that you'd like to learn more about. You would become a catalyst in the community around accurate knowledge, depth of knowledge, a person who could easily represent the interests of a group of people in a productive way. These are qualities that are really in short supply. We all have a responsibility as members of the community to learn about what is going on, to be fair about what we are being told, to be able to evaluate what it means. It's not just about going into a major complaining session. So if you care about your community, if you have a desire to understand more about your community, as Mayor Joanne said, if you have skills as volunteers, as in any kind of formal sense, these, including group skills, these are all very important when you get to the table to act as a member of a committee. However, you need to be prepared to commit somewhere between 20 and 40 hours a week to reading and going to meetings. If you think that you might run for regional council, if you're in one of those areas, it's going to be up in that 40-hour part. You can't avoid it, because you have to read everything about the committees that you sit on and what's being discussed in all the other committees, plus the outside committees like the police board and the housing forums. So I would say that at the very least, and not to scare the daylights out of you, it is a big commitment. But I think that you're here because you're serious people and you see the value in involving yourselves. You have a lot of lived experience. Why not share it with others? So let me start with that. And then you need to have an understanding, a realistic understanding of what the role of a counselor and the role of a mayor is. You are not going in to get to the bottom of things. If that's your purpose, then I would suggest that you find another way to influence change. In 2014, when I first became mayor, I had worked on my Master's of Public Administration. I knew that we were in an era of policy governance. Policy governance is where the council sets the priorities. They have an excellent administrator and an excellent executive staff, and they carry out what you consider the direction to be. Where do you get the direction? Well, first you get it at the door. And then you start to develop mechanisms for hearing people's concerns, and you start to build, and everybody on council does this. And so when you get together at the table, that's what you're talking about. So it is very important to understand that role. I can tell you that I know many people now that have been on council for 12 years, and they still do not ascribe to this principle of policy governance. They're always trying to manage the staff. And I can guarantee you that is not what the public are looking for. They don't need two sets of managers. What they need is a council that can direct where the council is going. And they need very, very good people who know how to carry these directions out in an efficient and effective manner. I think I'll stop there because this is a tough nut, and it takes quite a long time actually to get to the point where you really understand what this all means in your day-to-day role.
Mhm. I'm just going to remind our audience that if they have questions for the participants, please add them to the chat, and we'll be visiting them at the end of our panel conversation. And then we do have lots of time, so I'm going to dive into this a little bit. Both of you have experience either currently or previously as mayors, which is, and unique is only 20% of mayors across Canada are women, believe it or not. So you both have a unique experience. I'm just wondering if you have any advice for anyone, and I'm going to start with Mayor Easton and then move to Joanne. Any advice for someone who's considering running for a mayor versus a councillor? Mayor Easton?
Thank you, Diana. I think that what I've said earlier is really, I think, the fundamentals are there. You really do need to sort out why you want to do this. I can tell you the very day that I decided that I wanted to run for council, for mayor, I heard a woman in her 80s talking to a colleague about a committee that she sat on in the town. It wasn't this town, it was another town. And her comment in this very, very, very frail voice was, well, if that's the best they can do for us. And I thought, I can do better than that. And I think that we should all feel that we can do better than that. So there's that element to it. There's an element around social media that you're going to have to come to terms with, because I consider social media, other than a good place to chat with your neighbors and to help people out, to be a non-functioning element of what we're doing as municipal leaders. Because the municipality is responsible, in my mind, to ensuring that information is available, accurate, timely information. A two-way conversation is available for people, and it's not easy to do now, particularly, with the fact that we hardly have any local newspapers. But I think that's something that you're going to have to come to terms with, because it may make you very popular, but once you say something, if you've somehow breached your ethics or your own standards around integrity, it's not going to be easy to take that back. So I think there's an element of that you need to take into account. Once you are elected, you are open to the public, and it doesn't make it, you can't take the hat off. I'm going out tonight, I'm taking off my mayor's hat. Sorry. In short order, they'll be referring to you as Mayor Hewson, and you'll be, people know who you are and they watch everything that you do. These are little side notes. They're important. Some people never understand. They never get to the point where they understand or accept that once they are elected, they are in the public eye, and that's it. That is a decision that you've made to join that public realm.
Expect to be stopped at the grocery store.
Absolutely. Yes. Of course, at the grocery store, 100%. Joanne, you must have.
And don't think you're going to get away with it at church either. It doesn't matter where you are. Thank you. I agree with everything that Mayor Sandra just said, and I wrote a few jot notes down, but so I'm not going to touch social media so much. But I could tell you that I have an identical twin sister, and she changed her clothes before she went to the grocery store. So she wouldn't reflect badly on me because people always were stopping her thinking she was me. So it goes a little further in my family. We would say stay strong. You know, you have to listen always. Stay strong in who you are. Um, I am a proponent of collaboration. I believe that every councillor, or deputy mayor, they all deserve to be heard and have an opportunity to speak. What I did with my council when I became mayor was I even changed the way we set everything up, and I gave them each a committee that they had to actually report to at council, so they got some airtime as well. So it's everybody got a job, and that gave everybody opportunity to be part of the action. Um, I am not a proponent of the new strong mayor's powers. I believe that sets up some people for failure, and it becomes an ego thing. I really don't. That's my opinion. I really don't agree with that at all. Social media, yes. COVID was horrible. People were angry about everything, and it was really, it eroded a lot of my council wanting to be councillors again. So that really set people back. There's one thing that I always tell people. I've mentored a lot of young women, and these are three words that I was going to say at the end, but I'm going to say them now because Diana, you asked that question. Calm, confident, and credible. Always stay calm. If you stay calm, everybody around you stays calm. I had a lot of emergencies in my community from the first terrorist shot in Canada, train dropped, Snowmageddon, like months after I became mayor. The press was all over everything. If you stay calm, everyone stays calm. Confident. Be confident in who you are and what you bring to the table. Come to the table, use your voice. Make sure that you walk into the room with confidence. You don't need to be arrogant. You need to be confident. And there's a big difference between the two. And in order to achieve the first two, be credible. Always, always do your homework. As the mayor said, you can read all day long. You can learn all day long. There is so much to learn. When you get on council, it's like drinking from a fire hose. It is so much information. And then when you're on committees, that's even more reading. So it is like calm, confident, credible. Absolutely. And that makes a circle, and they keep feeding on each other. And I think that makes you stronger as a person. And I can tell you, one of my mentees at Western, when she got her first job, she called me up, Joanne. She says, I got the job and I did everything you said. And I did all my research and I got the money I wanted. I got the job I wanted. And I went, yes, because we need to support each other. Women don't support each other very well sometimes, and we really need to be stronger at that. So that's my little bit of advice. Um, I can tell you, committee work is also very important, and that's where a lot of work gets done. I told my husband once, between all my meetings, when I pass on, all you need to put on my tombstone is gone to the next meeting, best one of all.
That's great. Thanks. I just want to highlight for those who are thinking about how, what is the reading? All of the agenda materials are posted online. You can take a look, you can see what the actual reading would consist of, so you have a better picture of what's expected in terms of the role. And since there was a question, I think fits in well here. Um, I know as a mayor, you're a full-time in the role. As a counselor, part-time. How well can individuals do these jobs if they have another role, if they're working already?
When
And
I was
maybe I'll
mayor, I was
start,
all
I'll start with Joanne.
okay. I was in politics for 30 years. So I started as a counselor, and then I went to a deputy reeve, deputy mayor, and then mayor. Through most of that, I had a full-time job. I worked at a credit union. I raised three children. I got my university degree. You have to set your parameters. You have to make sure that when I worked at the credit union, they allowed me to work every Saturday morning so I could bank hours to take Tuesday afternoons off to go to county council, regional government. So, you can, if you have good relations with your employer, you can make things work. It's not easy. And hats off to my family for taking all the things that I did, because they knew that it was important to me to do that. So yes, you can have another job in the meantime, but it's not easy.
Mayor Easton, any thoughts?
Yes, I mean, the first time I was on council was in 1983 until 1989. And, things were quite different then. Life was a lot simpler. There's no question about it. but there was certainly a lot of work to do. I mean, we were part of regional government at that time, and it was extremely busy, particularly because we were starting to look at development. And the first few subdivisions were just starting in. So there were many, many challenges and not nearly as much direction as there is now, which was not easy. But I was working at McMaster Medical Center at that time. I was the head of the emergency department. And I had support from my employer and I had great support at home. You can't do it otherwise. It's just it's too challenging. It would be just nerve-wracking to not know that people were there to pick up the slack when you needed it, because there's no slack in these jobs. As you know, you have to just keep forging ahead, and if there's slack to be picked up, it's the council that's picking up. It's your deputy mayor that'll be there to go and attend something that you can't attend. So it is all, a lot of it has to do with relationship building.
Yeah, I'm just going to add because I didn't mention, but I used to be a regional counselor in Niagara for the town of Pelham. At that time, I also had a full-time job, and it is doable. You do need a good employer but you also have to pick and choose the time that you spend at council. You can't necessarily be involved in everything. You have to be selective in terms of where your focus is. But it is possible, and it was a very rewarding career for me. I got to meet these fabulous ladies. So we will move on to our next topic, which was leadership and community impact. Joanne, can you describe some of the strategies that you found most effective for engaging residents and ensuring their voices are heard in municipal decision making?
Sure, that's a great question because there's so many strategies out there. There are several strategies for effective communication. You can look them all up. I narrowed down on a few. Empower, collaborate, consult, or just tell people what you want them to do or think. Four very different ways of managing things. It's been my experience that you need to use a combination to fit the situation. I'll say that again. You need a combination of those four things to fit the situation. Whatever you do, stay engaged from day one. Before you run, join a committee, volunteer, attend public events, get to know your community, and have them get to know you. When you run, there will be town halls, debates, door-to-door canvassing, media interviews, advertising opportunities, including print and digital. In large communities, you'll need to have a website. Mine was small. I didn't need to have a website. I had one, but you didn't really need to. Be transparent, always truthful. Lies will catch up to you, sure shooting. So there you go. If you don't know the answer, say you'll get back to the person and do that promptly. Develop an elevator speech, a little pitch about yourself and what you want to achieve. Because there will be times where you end up either in an elevator or in a group where you have just moments to introduce yourself and tell people about yourself. They don't want the speech, they want the elevator pitch. After you're elected, you'll need to be accessible by phone, digitally, and in person. Acknowledge concerns and take public input seriously within constraints of budget and legal limits. That's important to remember as well. And Mayor Easton touched on a few of those things in some of her answers, the legality of what we do on a municipal council. Attend as many public events as possible and learn to listen before you speak. Be brief, clear, and concise. Your legacy won't be your title or your resume. It will be how you make people feel after meeting you and how you treat them. That's your council, your staff, your public. Be unforgettable for the right reasons. My public career, and I call it my public service career. I don't call myself a politician at all. I call it my public service career, has been lengthy. And I have found it truly, truly rewarding. I've had the opportunity to learn continuously, connect with remarkable individuals, two of which you see on your screen here, and take on leadership roles that I could never in a million years have envisioned for someone from a small town like myself. That's my answer.
Thank you, Joanne. So Mayor Easton, I'm going to ask the question of you. How can municipal leaders balance local priorities with broader provincial or federal mandates, especially when resources are limited?
Well, legislation, when those that are involved with us today, if they start doing some research on the legislation, what they're going to find is that it's been developed with the community as a whole approach, not something for Ward 1 or Ward 2 or Ward 4, but you need to think about your community as one place. You can decide that you're going to divide work up so that there's a balance across the whole town, but it really is the benefit to the community as a whole. That's the approach that should be taken. And when you're talking with people, and some people can be extremely vocal, they want to be heard all the time, and they know how to, turn on all the bells and whistles on to be heard. But you're not there just to listen to the loudest voices. You're also there to hear the minority. And the minority is they are powerful in their own right, and you need to give them as much attention as you give others. So when you build a strategic plan, you have to make sure that you take into account the provincial priorities and where the sources of revenue might be. A lot of times you will be able to shorten the circuit around what's happening, where the money is, how easy it is to get that money, just because you're on the same wavelength as the province or the federal government is, because much of our money comes from the feds. It's just channeled down through the province, and they're the ones that actually give it out. So that it's very important to be in tune with that, even at the councillor level, because you will be less frustrated if you're not pushing against an agenda that isn't never going to come your way. So I think that is important, and it's important to try and fit your own personal needs and the needs of the people that are influencing you. Try and fit that in with what other people have to say. When you're talking with your colleagues, if you find where your common ground is, oh my goodness, life becomes much, much easier when you've got at least one other counselor behind you. You can start, you can soon put a notice of motion on the table. There's a mover, there's a seconder. You start to work it out with the clerk, and there you go. You're in business. You're in the business of local community building. Partnerships are so important, and I believe that a lot of the success we've had in Lincoln is because we have many partners. We respect people, we're careful with them so that we're not, we're never in a position of having a bad relation. You don't want that to ever to happen. But you do want to avoid duplication. And for us, being able to share services, for example, our environmental specialist, he works for Lincoln, for West Lincoln, and also for the town of Pelham, which is where Diana is from. And that's excellent because we're all doing the same things. We're all dealing with the same watershed, and it makes a great deal of sense to have that kind of a relationship. I'll give you an example. We have a big project in Lincoln called Prudham's Landing, and developing partnerships with the region was extremely important. When we went to apply for the Hughes grant, which was a grant that was really tailored to support a faster development, faster building of homes. And so this was for the water system that was going to feed them. We not only got the 13 million for that water project, which was unheard of, but the region also was able, because of our partnership, they were also able to get the money for the pumping station, the sewage pumping station that was located in Lincoln, but was going to be the responsibility of the region. And so we were able to work together to to keep that moving in the right direction. But those are small examples. And when you're in this business, which I consider to be the biggest privilege of my life, it is a real pleasure when you can develop those relationships and they become, I think, quite long-standing, even with people that aren't involved in the future. You know, maybe people will only stay in a few years, but they become that lifelong link that you have to get other things done in your community. And this is where I think those of you who are here because you're a bit curious, but you also have some drive that is leading you to come forward and to take part in some of the learning more and then finding a place where you can actually make a difference. One word that I would use that I think is so very important is resilience. If you are naturally a resilient person, you have a positive outlook, you are always looking for the different ways to get things done. You're not a person that just arbitrarily says no. It becomes yes with the following conditions or the following circumstances. Maybe people want something and they can leave. It might look a little bit different by the time the staff have gone through all the rules and regulations with them, but they can leave. You can satisfy people's needs and they can feel well supported because you, as their representative, have created an access so that they can come in and talk to all the right people and use their own time quite effectively. So again, know your role, understand that we are in a policy governance environment, and always be honest. I was quite horrified to hear someone say to me, I just tell people what they want to hear. And I thought, oh my goodness, I wonder what happens further down the road. I wouldn't do that. You have to be very honest with people. And the best way is, as Mayor Joanne says, you don't always have to have the answer immediately. And you can go away and find out what the answer is, or you can certainly refer them to the experts within the town. Then you're going to get the most up-to-date information. Of course, it will be accurate and timely. There are other things, but they're too complicated. There are other things about the role, but they aren't important, I think, at this moment. We just want to give you a bit of a realistic flavor of what this is all about so that you can decide how you want to go forward.
Yeah, I really like what you said about the importance of relationship and collaboration and how it can really empower your municipality to go further and faster together with your with other colleagues. And the idea of not having, it's okay not to have all the answers, and sometimes you need to lean on the municipal staff who really are the ones with the boots on the ground doing the work and getting them involved in terms of responding to inquiries. I think that's great advice. We do have a couple minutes free to address some of the questions of the audience. We've had a couple questions come in. I'm just going to throw a couple at you. Joanne, the first one I'm going to toss your way. There's a question around how does one get involved in the municipality or the community without being elected? What are the opportunities available to kind of get your feet wet a little bit?
Well, the first thing that pops into my mind is service clubs. Service clubs are out and about doing all kinds of incredible work for your communities. They're always looking for help. Pick the one that really resonates with you and then volunteer. There's also opportunities with things like the Salvation Army, hockey. I mean, if you're a hockey mom, you know all about what I'm saying here. Dance clubs. There's so many different events that happen in your community. Become a part of one of those, and you can then get to know other people. They get to know you. Every election, after the election, there's usually a notification on the website of the municipality asking for committee members. And Mayor Sandra has touched on this as well. Put your name forward for one of the committees. Boy, you learn a lot on those, and then you can have some background. Remember, your clerk if you're going to run, your clerk is your friend. Your clerk can tell you all the deadlines, all the different things that you need to know, and give you the paperwork that you should absolutely read cover to cover to find out what your rights are, what you need to do legally, and how to move forward. That's something that neither one of us really mentioned, but I think really should be strongly iterated. Yeah, so there's all kinds of ways you can become involved. Church groups, soup kitchens, sports. Yeah, lots.
Thanks, Joanne. Mayor Easton, maybe you could highlight some of the committees that do open up after the election and have a call out for public members of the public.
Well, the Heritage Committee comes to mind for sure. And that's a great one because, it's especially now when we're attempting to identify a heritage district in our business district. So that's a very interesting one. Transportation Committee is quite interesting. And it also dovetails with some of the work that's being done at the region. And it also allows people to have a voice around things like transit. We're just, really starting to get into that in some of the smaller communities. And there are people who really don't believe that the investment is worthwhile. But last year we had a number of roundtables with businesses. And what was the first thing they talked about? The importance of people getting to work. If I'm recruiting people, they also have to be able to get to work. And so that's an important committee to be part of. For anybody that's had any planning experience or planning background, the Committee of Adjustment is very interesting. It deals with a lot of the technicalities, and it works pretty independently under the Act, and so that's another one that is interesting. The roles with the seniors clubs, very, very important, particularly now, because I'll tell you, there's a real surge when it comes to pickleball and some of the events that they are interested in, and there's a lot of lobbying that goes on. So there's, that's a little bit more lighthearted, but at the same time, it has its serious point. I noticed that hockey is like 3 times bigger than it was when I became mayor. They're asking for another ice pad. But again, that's another agency that is now the 3 communities have come together, and what a difference that made in terms of the number of volunteers that were needed. So there's all kinds of things. Even, traditional organizations like Scouts and Girl Guides. We have something like 25 leaders in our scouting group for about 120 scouts just in Lincoln, just in the Beamsville area and Vineland area alone. That's where the majority of them come from. These people spend a lot of time learning about the role, and they offer a great deal because this is what is building our community from the ground up, and it is so important to have good role models.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And they're all spaces where you could be building a network, which could help you be connected and potentially, if you want to become more involved in municipal politics, you'll have a network to then work off of it and potentially put your name forward. So another question that was posed, and this is more of a Niagara specific question, so I might just give this to Mayor Easton, but Joanne, if you want to answer too, you're free to do that. The question is, what's the most common misconception around a service that's actually at the regional level versus the municipal level? What are people misconstruing in terms of what sits at the town versus what's at the region? Is there something that comes up?
There's so many things. Planning is one, because planning's now been removed from the region and it's at the local level. But, having said that, it's a very new thing. And so
Yeah.
everybody's sorting that out, and that includes the public. There was public works.
From some of those provincial policy changes that we talked about earlier.
Yes. So, that's probably one of the bigger ones. But I think roads as well, because you hear all the time about the snowplow that goes down the road, and then it has to lift it has to lift the blade because it's come up to Pelham, for example. So we wouldn't dare in the past move into Pelham and clear a swath of road. No. You'd turn around and away you'd go back into Lincoln. But a lot of these things are changing. But I think it's anything like that, when you have two tiers where there are shared responsibilities, you're going to have that happen. I don't believe it can be avoided. It probably shouldn't be avoided. People learn a lot, I think, when they're interacting with people. They hear different perspectives, so it's not entirely a bad thing.
Joanne, any misconstrued services you want to flag?
Well, I would say roads is probably the highest. We have regional roads, municipal roads, county roads, and the snow plows, and who takes care of what, how that all works together. One thing we haven't mentioned are nursing homes. In our counties, we each have to run at least one nursing home. People don't know that we run a nursing home. We have two nursing homes in our community. One is run publicly with a corporation, and one is run by the county. And one has a union and one doesn't. So there's all kinds of those nuances, I would call that. And money. Nobody knows which tax dollar goes where. I mean, it's if you're in it, you know, but you don't necessarily know who pays for what and how that comes down the chute. That's a big one as well.
And also, Diana, remember, I mean, for every dollar, we're only keeping somewhere between 8 and 9 cents. You know, a very, very large chunk of that goes to the region, and then there's the education tax as well, which I must admit, it hasn't changed in quite a number of years, but still it is a portion. We collect all of the taxes, but what actually stays in the municipality is really quite a pittance.
Another question we got is around communications. Is there a skill set that's more important at the municipal level than perhaps if you were running at the federal or provincial level?
What do you think they mean by communication?
Maybe perhaps as an elected official, is there an approach to communications that would be different at the municipal level? I'm going to suggest you're probably much more accessible, and you're probably the one answering the phone because you don't have the support of staff. Whereas if you're elected at the provincial or federal level, you often have an office handling the correspondence for you. So what would be the communications demands on an elected municipal official? And I'm going to start with you, Mayor Easton.
Well, they are significant. There's no question about it. But I mean, we're a population, you know, getting closer to 30,000 now. Joanne, what is your population?
23,000.
23. So
We might be closer to 24 now. That's
Yeah.
just Strathroy-Caradoc.
And that's about where we were when I first became mayor. So you will get lots of phone calls, and I have a part-time executive assistant, and she will refer things to, she knows the issues. She'll refer them to the staff member, but I will still call people and make that contact with them just to let them know I'm aware of it. If I can't do that, I'll send them a message and let them know that I've received their correspondence and that it's been referred on. But it's very important to be available for people. That is part of this work. People would be very disappointed, and they should be disappointed if they don't have the attention of their mayor and councilors. I think nothing is more demoralizing than that.
Anything to add, Joanne?
Yes, if I could, Diana, I would really take a course in media relations because you will be dealing with the media, and mostly it's the mayor that deals with the media, but sometimes people, like in small communities, the reporter will, you know, sideline someone and ask questions, and you need to be able to articulate that. Phone, you have to answer your phones. I remember when I was the mayor, I would answer the phone and they'd say, I'd like to speak with the mayor. And I'd say, well, this is she. And they go, really? The mayor picks up the phone? It's a small community. You don't have all that staff and layers of people before they get to you. Open door policy. We always had an open door policy. After COVID, we have an office where they can send people to now because it became a little bit dangerous in some situations. But you know what? That's not something to scare people off with. And I'd also recommend people going to something like Toastmasters. We have a Toastmasters in our community, and it is fabulous what you learn and how they can help you bring your confidence forward when you're speaking and not say things just because, oh no, somebody's talking to me, I have to give them an answer. No, calm down. Make sure you've got that down, Pat, and answer the question. Just relax. And they have all kinds of people there that can help you out. Learn, learn, learn.
Hmm. There's nothing like a little bit of a time and effort to build your confidence in something.
And yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, listen, we've kind of reached the end of our questions already. So that means that we're at the end of our panel discussion. What can I say? Wow, that was such a great conversation, and I think you've given all of our participants quite a lot to think about, especially those who are considering running for office. Thank you so much for participating in the panel. I want to give both of you an opportunity, if you have a final thought, to share a few words with our audience. Joanne, I'll start with you. Anything further you want to leave with our audience tonight?
No, other than the calm, confident, credible. And you know what? You are more powerful than you think you are. If you want to run for council, you run and you take some of these things that we've said, take them to heart, and you do the best job you can because that's all any of us can do.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And Mayor Easton, any final thoughts?
Yes, I mean, people shouldn't hold themselves back because it's a different and complex environment. We all learned, and there's lots of people out there to help. If there's anybody in the Niagara area that's wants to have a conversation, please give them my contact information here at the town. I've met with a few people already, and I'm happy to continue to do that. And the other thing I would say is if you can find, if you want to check out a few values, a few of your own personal values, see if you can find some questionnaires and some little mechanism where you can check out how your integrity holds up in a challenging situation, or how your ethics might hold up in a situation where you're going to have to make a quick decision, and the information is maybe a little bit different than what you've normally looked at. I think those are probably two areas where, because that may tell you that you may or may not be cut out for this, not because you don't have those qualities, but because those are the ones that really put you on your back heels sometimes.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. Thank you so much, Mayor Easton. Thank you, Ms. Vanderheyden, for sharing your experience with us, and for everyone who joined us tonight. I'd also like to thank, of course, Karina and Brad from the GNCC for their help in organizing and delivering the webinar tonight. I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. And of course, the Wind Council for collaborating and offering this programming. So this brings us to the end of today's session. We hope you found value in the information and the experiences that were shared today. Just a reminder that Equal Voice Niagara will be offering further programming focused on municipal politics and potentially running for office leading up to the next municipal election in October. If you have an interest in being informed about our sessions or when they're being offered, please make sure to follow us on our Facebook page or on LinkedIn, and we will be sharing that information. So thank you all for attending tonight, and we hope you have a wonderful evening.